Hey, Magic friends, welcome back. This is your captain speaking here on Captain's Clyde's MTG. We're back again. This time we're going to go through the top 5 cards that I think is going to have an impact on the modern format. That's right, the format we all love to forget that we haven't really played a whole lot of for a very long time. But still, things are changing, rules are changing, new cards are out. And let's talk a little bit about these really cool new cards from Dominaria United and how it's going to actually affect the modern format, if at all. First thing to remember, though, don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 people, and unfortunately, I will not be covering Liliana of the Veil because she's already in Modern. So she defaulto cannot be on the list since she's already in the format, or she would be on the list because she's in the format. We know how good she is because she's in the. Anyway, you get the point. So no Liliana, so we're gonna have to really dig deep here. So I don't know if you agree with me or not, but let's take a look. First off, we have honorable mention. We have the Runeveiled Horde Master. So this is the Goblin Lord, red and 1 for a 1/1. Whenever another goblin you control dies, exile top card of your library. If it's a goblin creature, you can cast it until the end of your next turn. I gave this honorable mention only because there's really not been a lot of goblin decks running around Modern. The goblins just aren't good enough, but we do have some decent goblins. We have a couple goblins in the, Boros burn deck or the straight burn deck, and this could be a card that maybe goes into it because, again, it has the ability that if it's killed, you can play a card off top of your deck till the end of your next turn. So it's almost like a draw card, which may be good enough for those Boros burn decks um, to actually play. In worst case scenario, you draw 3 of them in your opening hand, and all of a sudden you got 3/3/3s. Like, I don't know. I gave it an honorable mention. We'll have to see how it goes. But I think it's probably going to pop up in a few red decks. I'm not going to lie. So, that's honorable mention. So let's get down into it deep now. We'll start with number 5. Number 5 is electrostatic infantry. That's right. So this is very similar to a Swift Spear. I know it costs 1 more. I know you guys don't like that, and people are going to complain about it. But for 1 extra mana, here's what you get. You get the 1/2. It comes with trample, which means you're going to get through more often than not. Plus, instead of prowess, it has a +1/+1 counter from instants and or sorceries. So that means if you get this on the battlefield and they don't deal with it, it will get big enough to kill them. Big enough to kill lorgoifs. Big enough to kill other things because it also has trample. So this becomes, I think, a creature that may be better than Swift Spear. We'll have to wait and see. Um, it's going to be real iffy. That extra mana may make a difference, but because it's only 1 red start, you can still splash it in those Boros decks and what have you. I think this gives a whole new development or a line to those Boros decks because once you use a Boros charm, you slap somebody in the face for 4. If you've bolted them twice and this thing is now permanently, a 3/4, and you swing in with it and they don't block it, you give it double strike, you're going to get 8 damage instead of 4, which is kind of a break even, right? But what happens if you're late game or if you get a couple more in there? It's just easy to say that this thing has a very high potential and a very low ceiling. So, or however that goes. Anyway, moving on. Next we have number 4, Leaf Crowned Visionary. 2 green for a 1/1 elf. All elves get +1/+1. This is the Elf Lord. I think what's going to push this over, if anything, is the fact that you can pay a green to draw a card if you cast an elf spell. This may be the card, and I think it probably is, that's going to actually give elf decks a chance. Because elves produce mana. We all know this. If you lay an elf on turn 1, on turn 2, you literally can lay this and then cast a second elf and draw a card. From there, it's just a colliding effect. It's a big snowball. If they don't stop it and you start pumping out elves left and right, we get 2 of these guys out. You're drawing a card every time you lay an elf spell for every one of these you have for 1 green. I think there's a potential for this to almost be a storm style deck, much like we see Legacy Elves, where it just really just goes off in a turn or 2. And we'll have to wait and see because we're not really playing a whole lot of board wipes in Modern at the moment, and this may change that. Going on, next we have Voldalion Hexcatcher. That's right, I think this is good enough to start a Merfolk deck. It's a 1/1 flasher, all Merfolks get +1/+1, but the kicker on this one, you can sacrifice a Merfolk to counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1. This is a crazy ability, especially with how cheap Merfolk can be, and if you have some way to draw cards. I think this effect may be one of the best Lord effects that we have, especially for Modern, because we all know Modern runs on mana premium. What that means is they have low mana cost on everything, and they don't run a lot of land, so they often will not have the extra 1 mana. This is going to make your opponent stall and do things with extra mana up. That's going to slow him down and maybe give you enough time and or tempo to actually get across with an actual Merfolk deck. So it's a very interesting concept. I see a lot of potential to it, especially with how Merfolk has been running. So in the in Legacy, Merfolk is a thing. I really think that this may bring to light a new Merfolk deck depending on how the format shapes. Because when you can counter everything but a creature for 1 mana, and you're already running 2 or 3 mana spells at best, and it's hard to cast those, this may be a thing. So, moving on, next we have number 2 on the list, the Evolved Sleeper. So, I chose this because it's 1 mana for a 1/1. It comes out on the first turn, makes it easy. On the second turn, you can make it a 2/2 for 1 more mana, which isn't the best in the world, and I get that. But then you can actually put a Death Touch counter on it for 2 more mana, and it becomes a 3/3 Phyrexian with base power 3/3. But the real kicker to this, a lot like that green card, and I forget what it's called off the top of my head. Give me 1 second. Thinking. Hex Drinker. That's the one green that was really big in Modern for a while, and it kept getting bigger. It kept evolving itself. This is the same thing, but it evolves for less mana, and it has the ability right here, which I think is going to be big. 3 mana, it becomes a 3/3. It goes to a 4/4 because it gets a counter. You draw cards, you lose a life. That is a big deal. It's only 1 loss of life. It's better than Dark Confidant. Yeah, you got to pay 3 mana for it, but you can do it at the end of turn. You can do it several times, so it's probably going to happen in Moderns. It costs 3 mana. But the point being, this can really go the late game for you. Not only early game to get some easy damage across, but also in the late game be a big deal. That's why I think this is number 2, and I expect this to actually see quite a bit of play inside the Modern format. Next we have number 1. That's right, there's a new Goif in town, and it's the urborg lorgoif. I think this is going to be really big in the format. We'll start off with the easy part. 1, it's already a lorgoif. It has the same casting cost with the almost same ability of a star and then +1 to the other star, which is equal to the number of creatures in your graveyard. Now, if you're playing a form of zoo, or red-green zoo, or zoo in general, or really any kind of green deck that has creatures in it, once 4 creatures get into the graveyard, this is a 4/5 for 2, and that's often as big as most Goifs get. Now, if you get 5 creatures in your graveyard, now 5/6, that's the top end of most regular Lorgoifs. So adding 4 extra of these is probably just better as a creature, because you can run both the Urborg and this Lorgoif, and you've got big green creatures all day long. And because you don't have to so much rely on the creature of the cards in every graveyard with a lot of the stuff like Delve and Escape and all that stuff, which can eat graveyards up, this can actually be a creature that just gets creatures from the graveyard to make it big enough that it just kind of hits on all sides. Now the second part of why I think this is good, it can be kicked for a black or a blue or both. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, you literally, unlike normal Lorgoif, have the option with this card to fill your graveyard. So you could have 2 Goifs on the field, and your opponent nukes your graveyard with a Bojuka Bog or whatever they do, and you're like, oh, my Goifs are now 0/1s, and your opponent thinks he's safe. If you've gotten to 4 mana, which might have happened, especially if you're running some green, or at least 3. If it's a black or a blue, for 3 mana, you can lay this, mill yourself for 3 cards, hit at least 1 or 2 things that are make your goifs big enough that you can now have staying power to attack again. And if you've got 4 mana, you can mill 6 cards, you may very well just kill them. So I really think that's going to be the key to this card. We may not play. I think it's going to be 4 of these and maybe 2 or 3 of the other, or maybe 3 and 3. There's going to be a weird split in Modern moving forward where there's going to be goifs everywhere if you're playing green. And that's why I think this is the number 1 card for Modern. So get them while you can, kids. So with that said, remember, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comments down below, feed that YouTube algorithm, help the channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Please sub up. A little click for you means a lot for me. If you've done it already, thank you for subscribing. I appreciate your help. And if you want to do a little something extra, or if you just want to help the channel out without subscribing, feel free to dive into the description. There's a link in there to the eBay store where I'll be selling all the cards from Dominaria United box opening series, along with other cool stuff. There's a Patreon page. You can sub monthly to get cool swag, magic cards, deals on boxes that are sealed, especially even out of the new product. Also, there's a link in there to the email if you want to reach out and say, hey, or just have some questions, comments, or concerns. And let's not forget, until next time, be kind, and I hope to see you across from the game table.